Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back to these author interviews that I've been doing with my very good friends. And these are not just people that I admire, but people that I know that I got a privilege to collaborate with. And I really value their work. That's why I'm inviting them to share their journey with you so that you can be inspired on your writing journey as well. So today I have Dana Hall with me. And Dana, if you just want to introduce yourself, let people know who you are and what you
Hi,
do.
thanks. Yes, I'm Dana Hall. I am a clinical psychotherapist in the state of Illinois, and I have always been a writer, but more recently have been a published writer. Um, so that's an adventure that I've been going on. Also, I started a theater group. That's a virtual theater group during COVID. Great time to start a business, right? Right during COVID.
Yeah, yeah.
so so we're bringing virtual theater productions live streaming into people's homes, which is super cool. And that production is This Moment Productions, which we thought was so pinnacle, because this moment we need some levity, we need some connection, and that ties into the writing too. So we've collaborated on several projects now, and some of them during COVID, which I think makes it even more important to get these stories and narratives out there. So that's me, just trying to hold it down in COVID times in Chicago, Illinois, where we were just saying we just got the tier 3 notification. So we're safe here, and we're hoping everyone is safe as they're viewing this as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you for all that you do. And I know, like you said, we connected just through COVID, during COVID. And just in the past, I don't know how many months now, we been able to collaborate on a few projects. You joined the We All Belong book. I think that was the first in
Yeah.
the first project that you joined, and that was released in October and on Unity Day. And then now we're working on the Made to Overcome Caregivers Edition that from today's recording time, it will be a week from today that's coming out. And then you also joined the Made to Overcome Mental Health Edition number 3, which is coming next May. So you've been busy. And then the other one is I Quit. It's another
Yeah.
book also that's part of that we're publishing here at Gristnov Consulting. So it's been a joy to be with you on this project. And I love your writing. I just love how like your perspective on things, but also how you write about it, like just how you display your content makes it so relatable and so like just it really leaves for me I reading not just as a reader, as a publisher, as a writer, but also a person who works in the mental health field, who's help people in different level. I just see how it leaves those there's nuggets of wisdom, if you want, things for people to think about, and then also things for people to implement so that they can thrive, in spite of what it is that they're going through. So thank you. So when you are right, before you joined all those projects, you already had a book of yourself that was published. So if just touch a little bit on that, how you that's probably how you got started into the publishing world of writing, right? So yeah, give us a little bit of background story about that book.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. It really parlayed me into the world of writers, which is a beautiful world. I always considered myself a writer, but just in my journal, right?
Yeah.
And that self doubt that we hear from other writers that we collaborate with, and
Hmm.
where they're recognizing their voice, but they're reluctant to share. My book, Beyond Words: A Child's Journey Through Apraxia, just I don't want to say it got me over that, because that's always going to be there, that vulnerability when you're putting yourself out there. But it was about telling my son's story. And so, in the role of an advocate, as you know very well, sometimes we find the strength of voice when we're speaking for others, on behalf of others. So, I thank my son so much for giving me that courage and strength, because his story really helped me now to tell my story and to tell
Hmm.
stories related to the clients that I see that can help others.
Hmm.
So, Beyond Words is a children's book, a little bit different than the works that we've been doing together.
Hmm.
But it's a story very near and dear to my heart. My son has childhood apraxia of speech, and he was nonverbal until he was 5 years old. And now he's about 75% intelligible speech, which basically means mom can understand him
Hmm.
and others still struggle. So it really talks about how to be kind, accepting, and inclusive to all children, especially children who have invisible disorders. And someone asked me in another interview, it's like, so great, you wrote a book for children with apraxia. And I was like, I didn't though. I told my son's story and I wrote this book for all children because it's not just about one person's story. It's about the message of how to teach children the skills to be more inclusive. They have a natural curiosity and desire to want to connect, but sometimes we have to help shape that a little bit by giving them permission to explore these friendships. So that was my first publication. You know, it's just been a really nice journey to connect with other apraxia parents and children. My biggest accomplishment so far is being invited to be a virtual reader in my son's first grade class, to where I got the honor to read to them the story. And I talked with my son beforehand, you know, if he would be comfortable, it's his story.
Right.
And he said, yeah, Mama, of course. And when I was reading it, I could just see his face and he was just lit up and he's like, that's me, that's mine. And he was owning that narrative. And that right there just hooked me and wanted, you know, it just made me want to do more of that. So that parlayed into our connection with We All Belong, because my chapter there is my story about his story. So it's the mama story of raising a child with special needs. And, you know, it talks about those feelings of not always feeling included as a mom. All the parents sitting around chit-chatting about, oh, they just won't stop talking about the latest movie. Oh, they're singing that song again. You know, we can all imagine those songs, right? And I'm just sitting on the outs of that, just going, yep, I don't even know my son's favorite color. I don't even know what he dreams of. I would have given anything to hear my son sing that song over and over again, you know? And so you and I came together and I was able to write that chapter about, you know, some of those big feelings that we have as parents in relation to our children's narrative. And there are so many wonderful collaborators on that book. I mean, oh my goodness, when we have these calls together, I'm just so inspired. And I share these books with my clients as well, and they just see themselves in the text. And especially now with everything going on in the world, my story was about my experience with special needs. There was stories about racial injustice. There's stories about being minimized as a woman and not being visible, chronic illness. There's so many themes that were in there. And it was just so beautiful to see all of these people coming together to share their narratives. So that was my first collaboration in the in that We All Belong kind of, you know, group of strong writers coming together to write. Now, what else is she doing? Because she is together that are different, and these stories need to be told. So that's kind of where we started. And so we've just been doing some collaborations along the way. That one was a little bit more personal. Some of the stories that you're talking about that I was able to contribute come more from like a little bit of a clinical aspect, but I like to like be clinical, but human, right? Because great, you want to understand the theory behind people pleasing and codependency. That's from the I Quit book. I did a chapter on people pleasing. Great. And what? And what am I going to do with that, right? So you're right. I love to try to tie in some piece of action item. Here's a bit of the why, but what can you do with it? And why do you want to? You have so many other things to do right now during this time of life. Like, why are you going to read this chapter? I always want to give readers something to walk away with. And I love that about all of the people that you have selected. Love to do that. Each person's narrative gives something to the reader. And that's such a precious gift. I think that's the biggest way that we can learn as people and grow is from these narratives. And especially when we get these nuggets of wisdom to implement. Yes, yes, yes. So I love that piece.
Totally. So as you've been writing, is there something that you know now that you wish you knew then, like when you first started?
Yeah. So when I first started, it was with the children's book, and that was I came home from the park after my son had an experience at the park of exclusion. And I was crying and I was writing in my journal. I was just processing to my journal. And I didn't think it would go anywhere. I wrote a poem in the journal, and then I read it to a friend, and a friend was like, people need to hear that. And I was like, people don't need to hear from me. Back then, I always thought, well, all the things have been said probably. And there's probably smarter, more articulate, more captivating writers than myself. So my journal is just my journal. It doesn't matter. And my friend kept saying to me, do not minimize your voice. We all have a narrative and it deserves to be heard.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. That sounds great. Yes, thank you for the support. And, but it was just kind of that lingering thought of what if they're right? What if this does make a difference to someone else? I wish that I knew back then not to second guess myself, to just take the risk, that you can start where you are and still be uncomfortable and still do. I thought you had to be comfortable, confident, have all of your ducks in a row, and then you could write. And I was like, wait a minute, who made up that rule? Like, you could be a hot mess and still write.
Exactly.
And then figure it out later, right? And then get a good editor, get a good team around you, and just be honest and authentic and vulnerable and just see what happens.
Right.
Because if not a single person reads it but yourself and you're changed because of it, then you have made a difference. And if you have that one person who goes, I get it, I saw something there, then we have done more good than I would have ever hoped to have done by inspiring one and starting that ripple. So if I could go back in time, I guess I would tell myself, just do it. Just start where you are. You don't have to know. You don't have to be confident. Just be who you are and see where that goes.
Yeah. And that's such a good advice. I tell not just writers, but pretty much anybody that I get the privilege of coaching them is that you have to start where you are, and confidence comes by doing. You need to have literally prove to yourself that you can do in order for you to feel like you know how to do, so sometimes we wait for achievement in order to we with some kind of proof, like I can't do it because I have not done it before. Well, you'll never do it if you have not done it before, if you don't do it now, right? So you have to start where you are, and it's good, like you said, not to do it. You don't always have to do it alone. Do what you can on your own, then let others come alongside you, whether it's through collaborations like the four that you've been part of with me, or it's finding someone to edit. And I know you have even written articles for different platforms that you came to ask just for the editing piece, and that's okay. And it's like, just do your part, and then associate yourself with people who can take you farther. you know is there anything else that you think new authors or writers should know, like any other tips or advice that you have for them?
Um, I would say write what you know. Start with what you know. And, in my process, I get an idea and I'll just start writing down quotes that stand out to me, that motivate me. I'll start drawing images even. I'll put up Post-its like on a wall in my home where I see and pass by. And when I get another idea, I just put it up there. I email myself. Like, you don't have to have it all thought out to start writing. A lot of times people will share with me, like, I have an idea for something, but it's not really a full idea. It's just an idea. Well, just jot down that idea, grab a notebook, carry it around, draw in some ideas every once in a while. Be inspired, email yourself. I open my email. I have emails for myself. And I'm like, I'm spamming myself here. And so I would say to those that are interested in writing to just start with an idea, start with something authentic. Sometimes I think those beginning to write think that they have to take on a persona. Like, I'll be Stephen King. I'll be Dan Brown. And, you don't have to be anyone but yourself. We have the uniqueness of our individual natures and our experience that no one can replicate. Yeah. So being who you are is exactly the voice that needs to be heard. Mm-hmm. So my best advice would be just like, start where you are, find something that is authentic to yourself, let yourself be vulnerable. That's a hard piece. But if you write without vulnerability, no one wants to read. Really allow yourself to delve into that vulnerability. And we get was 2 years in the works before I an illustrator, and that was a whole other process.
Yeah.
And my son illustrated part of it. Like it was a whole process. Um, don't be afraid of the process. Just start. Just try it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Don't be afraid and just start. I think starting is the hardest part of anything. Just think of anything that you ever accomplish in your life. That's just starting, getting to the point like, okay, I'm gonna do it, and then doing it is the hardest thing. And I like what
Right.
you said about the ideas. It's like, and writing is not always sitting down and typing on your computer, or sitting down or and writing on your, in a notebook. Like all the things you mentioned is part of the writing process, where it's finding, you see something on the social media, or you hear something on the news, or you read something in a magazine, or some in memory that comes to mind that contributes to the idea that you originally had. You are collecting, you're doing research. That's the first part of writing. You're collecting enough
Right.
content to cover, to write. So that all of that is writing. So definitely, don't minimize or undermine, all the ideas that you have. You have a brilliant brain. All of you listening and watching, you have a brilliant brain, and those ideas will come. You never know who it's going to touch later. Yeah, so definitely. So I know that you're busy with, with the practice and now the theater company, and you're still writing. When, like, how do you now, just like how you get into the flow, but also where do you find inspiration as you're writing?
Yeah. So I think my practices of like clinically, I focus on like trauma work and mood disorders and relational disorders.
Mm-hmm.
So entering other people's narratives, um, I have a rich tapestry to kind of pull from in terms of the human experience, right? Like as therapists, we sit there and absorb narratives and stories and translate those back to clients. So there's a natural flow and understanding of narration and the human experience. And I'm always inspired by the work that my clients do because they're vulnerable and they're coming to tell me their stories. And I always honor their confidentiality, and I never write in any kind of way that would violate that, but I'm inspired by it. So the topics that I choose are often topics that I've had many clients, hundreds of clients, tell me their narrative on this particular topic, and combine that with research, my own experience, and put together something that other people can be touched by and learn from. That's kind of, for me, that's my through line. But I find inspiration all around me. My children and the way that they look at the world is a great way to find inspiration.
Yeah.
The way that they look at things so differently. Well, I don't know if it's differently, but it's wholeheartedly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we allow ourselves to look at things wholeheartedly and with a growth mindset, we start to go, yeah, why? And we get curious.
Yeah.
And so that curiosity is one of the most beautiful things that can lead people to writing. Because if you're curious, someone else is curious too.
Right.
And so why not? I think for me, what I've been told is that like I have a way of looking at situations and extracting out of something that maybe others didn't see, and maybe that's part of my gift. So I try to lean into that, lean into those nuances and that perspective. Um, just a different variation on, if you're driving in a car and we're all going to California together, and we might, 5 people in the car want to talk about gas prices and what they saw out the window. I might focus on how the song connected to the moment in the car. And, so I don't know, maybe my brain just works a little bit differently, right? And so I think for me, that's kind of my inspiration, is just the moments, and bringing those small moments, because I really believe that those moments are big moments, writing about those small moments, because I think those are things that oftentimes people like kind of skip over. And then when they read it, they're like, I've had those moments,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Um, So yeah, for me, it's just everyday stuff, but through this lens of just wholeheartedness and curiosity that I like to kind of hone in on.
Yeah, yeah. And it aligns with what you just said previously, like write about what you know, write from your strength, write what you're good at instead of focusing on all this other stuff that you have to, you know, make perfect before you even write. So I think knowing yourself, it should be, you know, something that all of us, you know, humans in general, but you know, here for what we're talking about, like writers should know themselves well enough, that self-awareness, like what am I good at? What are those gifts and talents that I bring to the table as I'm writing? What perspective, you know, angle do I take and, you know, take on things, and then build from that, you know, that you work with the things that come naturally, like just come easily to you. You know, I'm a big supporter of just making things simple, making things easy. And it's not that I'm afraid of hard work. You know, all everyone who knows me know that I work really hard with everything that I do, but it's there's this assumption that, you know, we have to work so hard in order to accomplish whatever goal we have, rather than working in a smart way in order to accomplish what we have. So one way to work smart is to work from your strength, you know, and because that's something that nobody else can bring to the table. Like you said, like there's always going to be someone smarter and, you know, better writer, better editor, better who what, you know, of anything that we want to do. But when you think about it, nobody sees that same topic, that same subject the way you do. You know, I remember when I first started, you know, a few years back, I had a coach tell me, she said, if you go to the grocery store, you're gonna find, you know, especially in the US, you know, you're gonna go any grocery store, walk in the bread aisle. Try to count how many different you know, brands, not just categories of bread, and then how many brands within each category. So like you, if even if you just wanted whole wheat bread, you're gonna find like three, four, five different types of whole wheat bread, and then so many brands that actually provide different types. You know, so it's like, but people still buy bread. Every grocery store, even the ones that we feel like 2 miles apart from each other, even one just a mile, they're all still selling the
Yep.
same bread. Why? Because all breads are not made equal, right? So you might, you know, you we all, like when we do this collaboration project that, you know, that I lead, we all are writing from, like, for example, with I quit, we're all writing something about, you know, quitting something so that we can be authentic self, but we're taking different angles on it. You know, someone can write the exact same book on stress, exact same book on grief, exact same book on domestic violence, for example, but it's not your story. Their story or not, it's not yours. Even if you're just writing it from a subjective view per se, kind of the how to and providing tools and resources, the angles you take, the viewpoints that you present are not the same. So don't ever think, oh, someone already wrote a book about that. Yeah, if you go on Google, you'll find a book on every topic, but people are still buying books. You know, so definitely, you know, don't let that, as new writers, I say, you know, for all of us, don't ever let that stop you. Own on and who you are, own on what you're good at, and then, you know, grow from there, and but also start writing from there. Don't wait to be, I don't know who you're trying to be first, you know, but we don't start with from where you are and start writing now. Because your story, the more you wait, I always think about it, how many people are missing out because you are waiting to be someone else when the world is waiting for you to be yourself. You know.
Exactly. Yeah. I always I always say to my clients, where do you feel most authentically yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that helps, especially for new writers, to hone in on a space where they feel authentic and can be vulnerable and bring their
Yeah.
voice, you know, and that I start there, and I find that my work is more authentic, it's more honest, it's more
Mm-hmm.
real, you know,
Mm-hmm.
when you let yourself explore, what you know.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. That's so true. Well, thank you so much for being here. I know how to get a hold of you. How can others get in touch with you?
Sure. Excuse me.
Right.
Um, you can find my website, danalhall.com, and on there, I have all my projects, my productions, my production company, new pieces of work that I'm doing, the Beyond Words movement, which comes from the book, where it's a group of us that are socially minded, trying to increase awareness for adults and children with neurodiversity. That movement's on there as well, and how to participate in our functions, which is super important and, of course, very dear to my heart. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably the best way to see everything. On Facebook, you can find me at Dana Hall Therapy or at Dana L. Hall. Try to keep it nice and simple. But yeah, so everything on the website is up to date, and you can find the productions and the publications that we've collaborated on as well, and some fun videos too. And I look forward to collaboration. So if other authors want to work together on some projects, I'm always open to that. I love the free flow of creativity amongst writers. Amazing things come out of these think tanks. You know, it's just incredible. So if you feel reluctant and you don't know where to start, reach out to one of us and bounce some ideas. You know, let's have a conversation and see what comes from it, you know. So yeah, so danalhall.com would be the best way to reach out to me.
All right. Well, sounds good. And we'll make sure we add that to the description here too. That way people can
Yeah.
just click on it and go check it out. But thank you. Thank you so much for being here, and thanks for all that you do. And for everyone listening and watching, like we shared here, don't wait to be someone else. Start writing now because the world needs your story. All right. Thank you
Absolutely.
guys.
Thank you so much.